My name is Dominic, 65 years old, and recently retired after running my own construction company for over 4 decades. Life was supposed to get easier at this stage, spending holidays with my daughter Lisa, her husband Paul, and my two precious grandchildren. But that all changed when I received that text message about Christmas that shattered my heart into a million pieces. After selling my business last year, I purchased a beautiful villa in Florida, thinking it would be the perfect place for family gatherings. My late wife Sarah would have loved it there. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from, and do not forget to subscribe if you want more stories about finding dignity when family lets you down. I built my construction business from nothing but calloused hands and determination. For more than 40 years, I climbed from job to job, eventually employing dozens of workers and taking on major commercial projects across 3 states. Throughout those years, every decision I made was with my family in mind, especially my daughter Lisa. I still remember her first dance recital when she was just 5 years old. I had been working a 12-hour shift that day, but nothing would have kept me from sitting front row, watching her twirl in that sparkly pink tutu. Sarah, my wife, had sewn it herself, staying up 3 nights in a row to finish it. Lisa beamed when she saw us both there, clapping louder than anyone else in the audience. That was our life back then, working hard but never missing the important moments. As Lisa grew older, I made sure she had everything she needed. When she got accepted to State University, I paid her tuition in full. No student loans for my girl. When she graduated and needed first and last month rent for her apartment in the city, I wrote the check without hesitation. That is what fathers do. That is what my father could not do for me, and I had promised myself my child would never know that particular stress. Sarah was always the gentler parent, balancing my occasional strictness with her endless patience. She worked as a school librarian, and her income helped during those early years when my business was just finding its footing. We were partners in every sense, supporting each other through the lean times and celebrating the good ones. When Lisa graduated college with honors, I saw the pride in Sarah's eyes that perfectly mirrored my own. The worst day of my life came 3 years ago when Sarah lost her battle with cancer. For 42 years, she had been my rock, my compass, my heart. Watching her fade away over those final months nearly broke me. Lisa was a tremendous support during that time, coming by every day, helping with medications, sometimes just sitting with Sarah so I could get a few hours of sleep. That was the Lisa I had raised, compassionate, devoted, present. Lisa met Paul during her junior year at university. He was studying business administration, just like her, though he focused on finance while she specialized in marketing. Paul came from a comfortable background, his father being a dentist and his mother a real estate agent in a wealthy suburb. The first time Lisa brought him home for dinner, I noticed how he surveyed our modest house with barely concealed judgment. But he was polite enough, and Lisa clearly adored him, so I made the effort to welcome him. Their wedding 5 years ago was everything Lisa had dreamed of. I paid for the entire thing nearly $70,000 when all was said and done. The venue was a historic mansion with manicured gardens, the flowers were flown in from somewhere exotic, and the cake had 5 tiers. Sarah was still with us then, though already beginning to show signs of her illness. She pushed through this pain that day, determined to see her daughter walk down the aisle. The photograph of the 3 of us from that day still sits on my bedside table. After the wedding, when Lisa and Paul found their dream starter home, I contributed the down payment as my wedding gift to them. It was a significant amount, nearly 1/3 of the home's value, but I wanted them to start their marriage without the burden of a massive mortgage. Paul never quite said thank you, but Lisa was appreciative enough for both of them. My grandchildren came along soon after. Grace arrived first, a beautiful little girl with Sarah's gentle eyes. She is 9 now, bright and curious about everything. Thomas followed 2 years later, now 7, with a mischievous streak that reminds me so much of Lisa at that age. Being a grandfather has been one of the greatest joys of my life. I have tried to be present for them the way I was for Lisa attending school events, taking them fishing, building a treehouse in their backyard with my own hands. I have made an effort to stay relevant in my grandchildren's lives, though it has not always been easy. These kids today grow up with technology that sometimes leaves me baffled. I bought myself a smartphone and asked Grace to teach me how to use it. She giggled at my confusion, but patiently showed me how to text, take photos, and even use some app called Snapchat that makes your face look like a dog. I wanted to speak their language, to be a grandfather they could relate to, not some out-of-touch old man they visited out of obligation. Last year, approaching my 65th birthday, I finally decided it was time to retire. A national construction firm had been courting me for years, offering to buy my company. The timing felt right, and the offer they made was generous enough to secure my financial future, and then some. After the sale was finalized, I felt both relief and a strange sense of loss. That company had been my identity for so long. Who was I without it? It was around this time that I began to notice subtle changes in Lisa and Paul's behavior toward me. Looking back now, the shift seemed to coincide with the news of my business sale and subsequent financial windfall. But at the time, I chalked it up to them being busy with their own lives, never wanting to be the father who placed demands on his adult daughter's time. The changes were almost imperceptible at first. Lisa stopped calling me every Sunday evening, a tradition we had maintained even during her college years. When I called her, the conversations grew shorter with more frequent interruptions and mentions of how busy she was. Our weekly family dinners became bi-weekly, then monthly, then sporadic at best. "Dad, we are just swamped this weekend," became a phrase I heard with increasing regularity. "Paul has a work thing," or "Grace has a birthday party," or "Thomas has soccer practice." Always a reason, always an apology that sounded rehearsed, hollow. When I did get to see my grandchildren, they seemed different too. Less exuberant when I arrived, less reluctant to leave when it was time to go. Once I overheard Grace ask Lisa, "Do we have to stay long at Grandpa's?" The words stung more than I let on. Had they been coached to be less enthusiastic around me? The thought kept me awake that night. I tried everything to maintain our connection. I invited them to dinner at their favorite restaurants. I offered to babysit so Lisa and Paul could have date nights. I suggested weekend trips to the lake house we had visited so often when Lisa was young. Each invitation was met with a polite decline or a non-committal, "maybe next time," that never materialized. The pain of being gradually pushed aside was unlike anything I had experienced before. Grief for Sarah had been acute, overwhelming, but at least it had a cause I could name and eventually process. This slow exclusion from my daughter's life was different, a continuous dull ache that intensified with each canceled plan and abbreviated phone call. 6 months ago, Paul received a significant promotion at his investment firm. They celebrated by purchasing a new house in Oakwood Heights, an exclusive gated community known for its country club and residents who were mostly executives, doctors, and the occasional professional athlete. The house was enormous by any standard, certainly much larger than what a family of 4 needed. When they gave me a tour, Paul made a point of mentioning the price tag and how the property values in the neighborhood were expected to appreciate substantially. "It is all about building generational wealth now," he told me with a glance that somehow made me feel like I had failed in this regard, despite having just provided him and Lisa with significant financial security through my lifetime of work. I tried my best to fit into their new social circle. Lisa invited me to a dinner party they hosted for Paul's colleagues and their wives. I bought a new suit for the occasion, wanting to make a good impression. But from the moment I arrived, I felt out of place. The conversation revolved around stock portfolios, private school admissions, and vacation homes in places I had never visited. When I tried to contribute a story about a challenging construction project I had once managed, I noticed Paul wince slightly and quickly changed the subject. Later that evening, I overheard Lisa explaining to one of the women, "My dad ran a small construction business before he retired." Small. The word echoed in my mind. My company had employed over 70 people at its peak and completed projects worth millions of dollars. But in this new world, Lisa and Paul inhabited that apparently qualified as small. There were other moments that revealed their embarrassment at my working-class mannerisms. When I complimented the host's wife on the dinner by saying the food was real good, Lisa later gently suggested I should say excellent instead. When I called the bathroom the restroom, Paul corrected me, saying in this setting, it was a powder room. Little corrections that added up to one big message: I did not belong in their new life. The first Sunday dinner they missed without any excuse or prior cancellation marked a turning point. For 10 years, regardless of circumstances, we had maintained the tradition of Sunday dinner together. Even during Sarah's illness, Lisa had come to the hospital and brought food so we could eat as a family in the sterile confines of the oncology ward. But that Sunday, I waited at my dining table with a pot roast, getting cold, unanswered texts on my phone, and a growing realization in my heart. After 3 hours, Lisa finally responded, "So sorry, Dad. Day got away from us. Completely forgot it was Sunday." You do not forget Sunday dinner. Not after 10 years. You choose not to come. That night, sitting alone with containers of leftovers I would be eating all week, I faced the truth I had been avoiding. I was no longer a priority in my daughter's life. The more successful they became, the less they seemed to want me around. My calloused hands, my colloquial speech patterns, my simple pleasures like fishing and woodworking, these were all reminders of a background they were trying to leave behind. It hurt. God, how it hurt. But as I sat there in my empty house, surrounded by photographs of happier times, I made a decision. I would not become the bitter old father calling his daughter to complain about being neglected. I would not guilt them into spending time with me. If I was no longer welcome in their new life, I would build a new life of my own. The next morning, I called my financial advisor, Harold, who had been helping me manage the proceeds from my business sale. We had been conservatively investing the money, planning for a quiet retirement, with occasional splurges on fishing equipment and gifts for the grandkids. But now I had different ideas. "Harold," I said when he picked up, "I want to buy a place in Florida. Something nice on the water. Not just a winter home, but a place I could live year-round if I wanted to." There was a pause on the line before Harold replied, "That is certainly doable with your assets, Dominic. Any particular area you have in mind?" I had always loved the Gulf Coast. Sarah and I had spent our 20th anniversary in a little rental cottage near Sarasota, and she had often spoken of retiring there someday. "Somewhere near Sarasota," I told him, "with enough room for family visits if that ever happens again." Within 2 weeks, Harold had connected me with a real estate agent who specialized in luxury properties along the Gulf. She sent me listings, and one property immediately caught my eye. A Mediterranean-style villa with 4 bedrooms, a pool overlooking the bay, and a private dock where I could keep a fishing boat. It was more house than I needed as a single man, but I kept thinking about those family visits, still hoping despite everything. The price was substantial, even with my newfound wealth, but I decided life was too short to pinch pennies when I had worked so hard for so long. I made an offer, and to my surprise, it was accepted without counteroffers or complications. Just like that, I became the owner of a waterfront villa in Florida. I flew down the following week to see my new home in person. Walking through those terracotta-tiled halls, gazing out at the sparkling blue water from the master bedroom balcony, I felt something shift inside me. This place represented a new chapter, one I was writing for myself rather than waiting for others to include me in their stories. The villa needed some updating and personalization. I hired a local contractor, appreciating the irony, to renovate the kitchen and bathrooms. I selected furnishings that balanced comfort with the elegant architecture of the place. In the largest guest bedroom, I chose furniture I thought Grace would like, with a reading nook by the window. For Thomas's room, I made sure there was space for Lego constructions and the model airplanes he had recently become interested in. I was preparing for visitors who might never come, but it gave me purpose. While the renovations were underway, I began exploring my new community. The neighborhood was filled with other retirees, many of whom had relocated from colder northern states. I met Jack and Marilyn next door, a couple from Chicago, who invited me to their weekly card game. There was Frank from Boston, who ran the community's fishing club, and Elaine, who organized the neighborhood book discussion group. For the first time in decades, I found myself making new friends without the context of work or family. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. These people knew nothing about my past, my success, my failures. They just knew Dominic, the new guy from up north, with a decent poker face and a passable golf swing. I joined the local golf club, though I had only played occasionally in the past. I signed up for a fishing charter and ended up becoming friends with the captain, who offered to teach me the local fishing spots. I volunteered at the community center, helping to repair and rebuild their aging facilities, putting my construction knowledge to good use. Each day brought new experiences, new connections. I started sleeping better, laughing more. The constant ache of Lisa's rejection began to dull, not disappearing entirely, but becoming manageable. I was building a life that did not revolve around waiting for my daughter to make time for me. Of course, I still tried to share this new chapter with Lisa. I sent her photos of the villa, of the sunset views from my terrace, of the yellow-billed spoonbill that had taken to visiting my dock each morning. I called to tell her about the sailboat I was thinking of buying, about the new friends I had made, about the community theater production I had helped build sets for. Her responses were polite but disinterested. "That is nice, Dad," she would say, before quickly changing the subject to something happening in her world. She never asked follow-up questions about my new life, never expressed any desire to visit or see the place for herself. It was as if my existence had been reduced to occasional courtesy calls that she fit in between more important matters. As October turned to November, my thoughts turned to the holidays. This would be my first Christmas without Sarah, the first in my new home. The villa was finally fully renovated and furnished a perfect setting for a family gathering. Despite everything, I still wanted to create new memories with Lisa, Paul, and my grandchildren in this place. I spent days thinking about how to extend the invitation. Should I send a formal invitation? I wanted to convey that this was important to me without applying pressure that might make them refuse outright. Finally, I decided a phone call would be best, allowing me to gauge her reaction in real time. One evening, after confirming the villa's guest rooms were ready and planning a menu that included all of Lisa's childhood favorites, I picked up the phone and called my daughter. I had it all planned out. The guest rooms were prepared with fresh linens and small welcome baskets. I had researched the best places to see Christmas lights in the area and bookmarked local holiday events that the grandkids might enjoy. I even found a tree farm where we could all go to select the perfect Christmas tree together, a tradition from Lisa's childhood that I hoped to resurrect. The shopping took me weeks. For Grace, I found a beautiful telescope, remembering her recent interest in astronomy. For Thomas, I commissioned a custom-built model train set that would fit perfectly in the space I had designated in his room. For Lisa, I selected a delicate sapphire necklace that had reminded me of Sarah's eyes, and for Paul, an expensive watch I hoped would meet his increasingly refined tastes. When I finally made the call, I tried to keep my voice casual, not revealing the hours of preparation and thought that had gone into this invitation. "Lisa, I was thinking," I said after our usual pleasantries. "Since this is my first Christmas in the new place, maybe you, Paul, and the kids would like to come down to Florida. The weather is beautiful this time of year, and there is plenty of room for everyone. I could get your flights as an early Christmas present." There was a pause on the other end of the line, the kind that makes your heart sink before a word is even spoken. "Oh," Lisa said finally, her voice taking on that careful tone she used when preparing to disappoint me. "That is a nice offer, Dad, but I am not sure if we can make it work with our schedule this year." "What schedule?" I asked, trying to keep the hurt from my voice. "The kids will be on school break, right? And I thought Paul usually takes time off around the holidays." "Yes, but—" Another pause. "Let me talk to Paul and get back to you, okay? It is just that we might have other plans in the works already." "Of course," I said, though we both knew there had been plenty of time for her to mention these other plans during our previous conversations, if they had actually existed. "Just let me know soon so I can make arrangements." Days passed with no response. I sent a casual text message, "Any thoughts on Christmas in Florida?" The reply came hours later. "Still figuring things out. We'll let you know." A week went by, then another. December was fast approaching, and I needed to know whether to prepare for a family Christmas or a solitary one. I called again, got her voicemail, and left a message asking for a definitive answer. 3 days later, around 10:30 at night, my phone buzzed with a text message. "Dad, we have decided to have a peaceful Christmas with Paul's family this year. We need our space. Maybe we can visit in the spring." I read the message multiple times, each word cutting deeper than the last. Peaceful Christmas. The implication being that a Christmas with me would somehow be chaotic or stressful. We need our space. From me, I had barely seen them in months. How much more space did they need? The phrase "Paul's family" stung particularly hard. I was family too. I was her father, the grandchildren's grandfather. But in this new equation, I had been categorized as something separate from family. And then the vague promise of, "Maybe we can visit in the spring," which we both knew was unlikely to materialize. It was the kind of empty offer made to soften the blow of rejection, not a genuine plan. I sat on my terrace that night, staring out at the dark water, a glass of whiskey in my hand. The initial shock gave way to a deep, aching sadness. This wasn't just about Christmas. It was the clearest statement yet that I no longer had a place in their lives. They had moved on, climbing a social ladder that apparently required cutting ties with their working-class roots, personified by me. For a moment I considered writing back something angry or hurt. I drafted and deleted several responses. "After everything I have done for you, your mother would be ashamed. Do the children know you are keeping them from their grandfather?" But none of those felt right. None of them would change anything, and they would only give Lisa confirmation that I was indeed a source of stress and drama better avoided during their peaceful Christmas. Instead, I finally typed, "I understand. Enjoy yourselves," and hit send. Short, dignified, and giving them exactly what they had asked for: space. But as I sat there alone in my beautiful new home, looking at all the preparations I had made for guests who would never arrive, I made a decision. I would not spend Christmas alone, drowning in self-pity. This was an opportunity, not just a rejection, and I was going to make the most of it. That night I barely slept. By morning I had moved through sadness to something else. Not quite anger, but a firm resolve. I would not be the pathetic old man sitting alone on Christmas while his daughter enjoyed a peaceful holiday without him. I had spent my life building things, a business, a family, a legacy. Now I would build something new, a Christmas celebration that reflected my worth and the relationships that truly valued me. My brother Frank was the first person I called. Frank and I had always been close, talking weekly, despite living in different states. He had retired to Arizona a few years before me and understood the challenges of redefining yourself in your later years. She said what? Frank's outrage when I told him about Lisa's text was both comforting and validating. After everything you have done for that girl, after you paid for that ridiculous wedding and helped them buy that house. I know, I said, not wanting to dwell on the hurt. But I am not calling to complain. I am calling to invite you and Marie to spend Christmas with me in Florida. The place is gorgeous, and I could use the company. Frank's tone immediately softened. Of course we will come, Dom. We were just trying to figure out our holiday plans anyway. Marie will be thrilled. She has been wanting to see your new place. My next call was to my sister Margaret in Philadelphia. Margaret had 3 grown children and 7 grandchildren, all of whom I had maintained relationships with over the years, though distance meant we did not see each other as often as I would have liked. Maggie, I said, when she answered, how would you and the family like to spend Christmas in Florida this year? All expenses paid. My treat. Margaret was initially hesitant. Coordinating that many people seemed daunting. But when I explained the situation with Lisa, her protective older sister instincts kicked in. We will be there, she promised. Every last one of us. No niece of mine is going to make my little brother spend Christmas alone. The calls continued throughout the day. I reached out to cousins I had not spoken to in years, to Sarah's sister Jane, who had remained close to me, even after Sarah's passing, to old friends who had no holiday plans. The response was overwhelming. People I was not sure would even remember me were enthusiastically accepting my invitation, rearranging their schedules, booking time off work. In the midst of these calls, I made an interesting discovery. When I mentioned to Jane that Lisa had decided to spend Christmas with Paul's family, she was confused. That is strange, she said. I talked to Lisa last week and she told me you were busy in Florida for the holidays. That is why they were staying home this year. A cold realization washed over me. Lisa had not just rejected my invitation. She had been actively lying to the family about the situation, making it seem like I was the one who had chosen not to spend Christmas with them. Further calls confirmed this. Every family member I spoke to had been told some version of the same story. Dominic is busy in Florida. Dominic has other plans. Dominic wants to spend his first Christmas in his new home alone. The discovery should have hurt, but instead it crystallized my resolve. This was not just about creating an alternative Christmas celebration anymore. This was about standing up for the truth and for my own dignity. I spent the next 2 weeks in a flurry of planning. The 4 bedrooms in my villa would not be enough, so I booked blocks of rooms at the nearest beachfront hotel for the overflow of guests. I arranged for a local catering company to handle the Christmas Eve and Christmas Day meals, though I insisted on making Sarah's famous stuffing recipe myself. Some traditions were sacred. I hired a decorator to transform the villa into a holiday wonderland, with lights along the terrace, a towering tree in the living room, and festive touches in every room. I ordered personalized gifts for each guest, determined that everyone would feel special and appreciated. As RSVPs continued to pour in, I realized we would be nearly 20 people in total, the largest family gathering in years. Every acceptance felt like an affirmation, every excited message from a cousin or niece a reminder that I was valued, that I mattered to people beyond the daughter who had deemed me unworthy of her holiday time. Throughout all of this, Lisa remained unaware. We had our usual brief surface-level phone conversations, where she never asked about my holiday plans, and I never volunteered them. When she mentioned they would be having Christmas dinner at their house with Paul's parents, I simply said, "That sounds nice," and changed the subject. One evening about a week before Christmas, I received a call from an unknown number that turned out to be Paul's mother, Catherine. "Dominic," she said, her voice tinged with confusion. "I wanted to check something with you. Lisa told us that you were unavailable for Christmas because you were hosting a big gathering at your new place in Florida. But then she invited us to their house for Christmas dinner. I just wanted to make sure we had not misunderstood the situation." I paused, considering my response carefully. Catherine and I had always gotten along well, despite her husband's occasional condescension. I did not want to put her in an awkward position, but I also would not perpetuate Lisa's lies. "Catherine," I said finally, "the truth is that I invited Lisa, Paul, and the kids to spend Christmas here with me. Lisa declined, saying they wanted to have a peaceful Christmas with your family. I am indeed hosting a gathering here, but only because my original plans fell through." There was silence on the line for a moment, before Catherine spoke again, her voice tight, with what sounded like controlled anger. "I see. Well, thank you for clearing that up, Dominic. Richard and I will certainly have a conversation with Paul about this. And for what it is worth, we would have been happy to celebrate in Florida. It sounds lovely." As the pieces of my alternative Christmas fell into place, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness for what had been lost, but excitement for what was being created. This would be a different kind of holiday one, where I was surrounded by people who genuinely wanted to be with me, not those who saw me as an obligation or an embarrassment. The day before everyone was set to arrive, I stood on my terrace watching the sunset, thinking about Sarah. "You would be proud of me," I whispered to the sky. "I am not letting this break me. I am building something new." And somehow I felt certain she would have approved. Christmas week arrived with perfect Florida weather, 75 degrees and sunny with gentle breezes coming off the bay. My first guests, Frank and his wife Marie, arrived 3 days before Christmas. Seeing my brother's face light up when he first walked into the villa was worth every penny I had spent on the place. "Holy smokes, Dominic," he said, walking straight to the wall of windows overlooking the water. "You certainly know how to retire in style." Over the next 2 days, the rest of the guests trickled in. Margaret and her husband arrived with 2 of their children and their families. Sarah's sister Jane flew in from Seattle with her husband. Cousins I had not seen in person for years embraced me with genuine warmth. My house, so empty and quiet for months, suddenly buzzed with conversation, laughter, and the occasional friendly argument about sports teams or politics. I had arranged for various activities to keep everyone entertained. A sunset cruise around the bay, tea times at the local golf course, a guided fishing expedition. But what I enjoyed most were the quiet moments in between morning coffee on the terrace with Frank reminiscing about our childhood, helping Margaret's youngest grandchildren build sandcastles on the beach, late-night conversations with Jane about Sarah and how much she would have loved this place. These were my people. They did not care that I sometimes said "ain't," or that I did not know the difference between a salad fork and a dessert fork. They valued me for who I was, not for how I might reflect on their social standing. Christmas Eve arrived, and the villa looked magical. Thousands of tiny white lights twinkled along the roofline and wound around the palm trees in the yard. Inside, the 20-foot tree in the living room was decorated with ornaments I had selected to represent everyone present. A miniature toolbox for me, a tiny fishing boat for Frank, a book for Jane, and so on. The dining table on the terrace had been extended to accommodate all 20 of us with crisp white linens, fine china, and centerpieces of poinsettias and hurricane candles. The catering team arrived in the afternoon to begin preparations for our feast. The menu included stone crab claws, a Florida delicacy I had become fond of prime rib, and all the traditional sides including Sarah's stuffing that I had prepared earlier in the day. Champagne chilled in buckets, and a selection of fine wines was ready for the meal. As evening fell and guests began to gather on the terrace for pre-dinner cocktails dressed in their holiday best, I felt a swell of emotion. This was not the Christmas I had planned, but in some ways it was better. A celebration of the family bonds that remained strong despite distance and time. Dinner was a joyous affair with multiple toasts, shared memories, and much laughter. After the meal, as we all sat lingering over dessert and coffee, Frank stood up with his glass raised. "To my brother Dominic," he said, his voice carrying across the table, "who taught us all what it means to rise above disappointment and create something beautiful. This is one Christmas so none of us will ever forget." The chorus of agreement and clinking glasses brought tears to my eyes. These people saw me, valued me, chose to be with me. In that moment, Lisa's rejection seemed less significant, a small shadow in a room filled with light. After dinner, someone suggested we take a group photo to commemorate the occasion. We gathered in front of the Christmas tree, arms around each other, smiles genuine. Frank's wife, Marie, an enthusiastic social media user, immediately posted the photo on her Facebook page with the caption, "Best Christmas Eve ever with the extended family at Dominic's gorgeous Florida villa. So blessed to be here with everyone." Other photos followed throughout the evening. Snapshots of the magnificent dinner spread of groups playing card games in the living room, of the spectacular view of Christmas lights reflecting on the bay waters. One by one, these images found their way onto various social media platforms, tagged with everyone's names, comments expressing joy and gratitude for the gathering. As the evening wound down, someone suggested we record a group video wishing Merry Christmas to friends and family who could not be with us. We gathered again by the tree, and Frank's son, who worked in media production, used his professional camera to film us. When it came time for me to speak, I kept my message simple and dignified. Looking directly into the camera, I said, "Wishing everyone a peaceful Christmas filled with love. We miss those who could not be here, but our door is always open." The word peaceful was deliberate, an echo of Lisa's text, but delivered without bitterness, a statement of what I had actually created here, rather than a jab at her rejection. The video, like the photos, was quickly shared across platforms. By the time we all turned in for the night, the digital evidence of our joyful gathering was circulating widely through our extended network of friends and family. I went to bed that night feeling more content than I had in months. Whatever happened next, I had refused to be diminished by rejection. I had created something meaningful and beautiful. I had remembered my own worth. On Christmas morning, we gathered around the tree in pajamas and robes to exchange gifts. The pile was enormous, everyone having brought something for each person present, despite my insistence that their presence was gift enough. The opening of presents lasted well into the morning, with exclamations of delight and many hugs of gratitude. Around noon, as the catering team was setting up for our Christmas brunch, my phone began buzzing with incoming calls. I ignored it at first, focused on my guests, but when it continued persistently, I finally checked the screen. 6 missed calls from Lisa. A sense of calm settled over me as I excused myself to the quiet of my study to return her call. When I answered, Lisa's voice came through frantic and accusatory. Dad, what is going on? Why is everyone at your house for Christmas? Aunt Jane just posted a video of all of you." I took a deep breath before responding, keeping my voice level and calm. Everyone wanted to get together for the holidays. It worked out well since my original plans fell through. But you told me you were busy. You said you had other plans. Her voice had risen an octave, blending confusion with indignation. No, Lisa, I corrected gently. You told everyone else I was busy. What actually happened was that I invited you, Paul, and the kids to spend Christmas here. You said you wanted a peaceful Christmas with Paul's family instead. You said you needed space. There was silence on the line for a moment, before she spoke again, her tone shifting from accusation to hurt. So you invited everyone but us, your own daughter and grandchildren. The unfairness of this statement might have angered me in the past, but now I felt only a calm certainty in my response. I invited my daughter and grandchildren first. When they declined, I made other arrangements. I did not want to spend Christmas alone, Lisa. But I could hear the calculation happening in her voice, trying to find a way to make herself the victim in this scenario. You should have told me you were having a big family gathering. Why? I asked simply. You had already made your choice. You needed space, remember, I was respecting your wishes. Another pause, longer this time. In the background, I could hear Paul asking questions, his voice tight with what sounded like panic. Then Lisa's voice again, smaller now. Dad, this makes us look terrible. Paul's parents saw the posts too. They had no idea you had invited us to Florida. They thought, we told them. I know what you told them, I said. Catherine called me last week to confirm the story. I told her the truth. A sharp intake of breath from Lisa. You had no right to do that. This time I did feel a flicker of anger. I had every right not to participate in a lie, Lisa, especially one that painted me as the absent father who chose not to see his family for Christmas. That is not what happened, and you know it. The sound of a door closing came through the phone, and Lisa's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Paul's mother has been calling nonstop. She thinks we deliberately kept them from a family gathering in Florida. She is furious. I cannot control how people interpret the truth, Lisa. Maybe instead of worrying about how this looks, you should be thinking about why you felt the need to lie in the first place. Lisa's voice cracked slightly. It was not like that. Paul thought, it would be easier this way. Easier than what? Than telling the truth, than saying you did not want to spend Christmas with your working-class father, who might embarrass you in front of Paul's parents, than admitting you have been pushing me out of your lives for months. The words hung in the air between us the first time I had directly confronted the elephant in the room. There was no response from Lisa for several long moments, just the sound of her breathing, slightly uneven, as if she might be crying. Finally, she spoke, her voice thick with emotion. That is not fair, Dad. None of this has been fair, Lisa. Not to me, not to your children who deserve a relationship with their grandfather, not even to Paul's parents, who were manipulated as part of your story. But here we are. Through the phone, I could hear another voice now, Paul's mother, Catherine, apparently having arrived at their house. The muffled sound of a heated exchange drifted through. Dad, I have to go, Lisa said quickly. Paul's parents are here and it is a mess. I imagine it is, I replied, not unkindly. Family gatherings are always complicated, especially when they are built on misunderstandings. Dad, please. There was genuine distress in her voice now. Lisa, I am not trying to make this harder for you, but I am also not going to pretend that what happened did not happen. When you are ready to talk honestly about all of this, I will be here. For now, I have guests to attend to. Merry Christmas. I ended the call and rejoined my family on the terrace where brunch was being served. Frank caught my eye, raising an eyebrow in silent question. I gave him a small nod to indicate I was okay, and he smiled, raising his mimosa in a toast that only I understood. Throughout the day, my phone continued to buzz with messages from Lisa, alternating between defensive justifications and tearful apologies. I read them all, but responded to none. This was not a conversation to have via text, and I would not let it intrude on the celebration I had created. The day after Christmas, as some of my guests prepared to depart, and others settled in for extended stays, I received a call from Paul. This was unusual enough to make me step away to take it. "Dominic," he began, his voice formal as always, but tinged with something I had never heard from him before: humility. "I owe you an apology." "Go on," I said, neither accepting nor rejecting yet. Paul cleared his throat. "My parents have made it very clear how disappointed they are in me, in us. They said they would have loved to spend Christmas in Florida. They said I had no right to speak for them or to create a situation that excluded you from the family holiday." He paused. "They are right. I was wrong." "And Lisa," I asked, "how does she feel about all this?" "She is devastated," Paul admitted. "She has been crying since yesterday. She keeps saying she never meant for it to go this far, that it started with small things and just snowballed." I sighed, feeling some of my carefully maintained composure crack. "That is often how these things happen, Paul. Not in one big decision, but in 100 small ones. Each time you canceled a dinner. Each time you corrected my grammar. Each time you made it clear I did not fit into your new life. Those were all choices." There was silence on the line before Paul spoke again, his voice quieter. "The children saw the pictures too. Grace asked why they weren't with Grandpa for Christmas. She was upset when she realized where all the cousins were. The mention of my grandchildren sent a pang through my heart. They were the innocent victims in all of this, denied a relationship with me because of their parents' choices." "What do you want from me, Paul?" I asked finally. "Why are you calling?" He took a deep breath. "We want to come to Florida. All of us. Lisa, the kids, my parents. For New Year's, if that is okay with you. If you still have room." The request took me by surprise. I had expected excuses or further justifications, not this attempt at reconciliation. "I will always have room for my family," I said after a moment. "But this visit needs to be the beginning of a real conversation, not a band-aid over a problem we never discuss again." "I understand," Paul said, and for once I believed him. "We all do. Lisa wants to talk, really talk, and I have some reflecting to do on my own behavior." After confirming the details of their visit, I ended the call and stood for a while on my terrace watching the boats in the distance. Part of me wanted to maintain my distance to protect myself from further hurt. But another part, the part that had saved for Grace's college fund since the day she was born, the part that had built Thomas a treehouse with my own hands, could not turn them away. 3 days later they arrived. Lisa, Paul, the children, and Paul's parents. The kids ran to me first, Grace throwing her arms around my waist, Thomas demanding to know if we could go fishing from my dock. Their uncomplicated love was a balm to my wounded heart. Lisa approached more cautiously, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Dad," she began, but words failed her, and she simply stepped into my embrace, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Paul and his parents stood back, giving us this moment. When Lisa finally pulled away, Catherine came forward to hug me as well. "Thank you for welcoming us," she said, "and for being the bigger person in all of this." That evening, after the kids were asleep, the adults gathered on the terrace. The remaining guests from Christmas had departed that morning, leaving us privacy for the difficult conversation ahead. Lisa spoke first, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. "Dad, I need to apologize. Not just for Christmas, but for everything over the past year. The canceled dinners, the short phone calls, the way we've made you feel unwelcome in our lives. I nodded, encouraging her to continue. It started small, she admitted. Paul got his promotion, and suddenly we were socializing with all these executives and their families. Everyone was so polished, so different from how I grew up. I started feeling insecure, worried I would not fit in. And somehow that insecurity transferred to me, I said, not accusingly, but seeking understanding. Lisa nodded, tears welling again. Instead of being proud of where I came from, of all you had built with your own 2 hands, I started feeling embarrassed. It is horrible to admit, but it is true. And the more I pulled away, the easier it became to keep pulling away. Paul, sitting beside her, took her hand. I encouraged it, he confessed. My insecurities fed hers. I was so focused on impressing my bosses, on being accepted in that world, that I lost sight of what really matters. Family, integrity, gratitude. He looked directly at me. You gave us so much, Dominic. The down payment on our first house, the beautiful wedding, your support throughout our marriage. And we repaid you by pushing you aside when you no longer served our social climbing. Catherine, Paul's mother, snorted softly. And to think they did all this while lying to us as well. Richard and I would have been delighted to spend Christmas here. We have always valued your straightforward nature, Dominic. It is refreshing after decades in social circles where everyone is calculating their every word. The conversation continued late into the night, painful truths laid bare, tears shed, apologies offered and accepted. By the time we all retired to bed, nothing had been fully resolved. Such deep wounds would take time to heal completely, but a foundation for rebuilding had been established. The next few days were a blend of family activities and continued conversations. We took the boat out on the bay, went to the beach, played board games on rainy afternoons. The children blossomed in the relaxed atmosphere, especially once they sensed the tension between the adults diminishing. On New Year's Eve, we gathered on the terrace to watch fireworks over the bay. Grace sat on my lap, her small hand in mine, while Thomas leaned against my side, half asleep, despite his determination to stay awake until midnight. Lisa stood nearby, watching us with a smile that held both happiness and regret. "Dad," she said softly, coming to sit beside us. "I have been thinking about what you said, about 100 small choices leading us here. I want to make different choices going forward." "What kind of choices?" I asked. "Regular Sunday dinners again, monthly visits here when the weather is nice up north, FaceTime calls with the kids several times a week." She paused. "And no more lies, no more pretending to be something we are not. I want Grace and Thomas to be proud of their grandfather, the man who built a successful business with his own hands, not some sanitized version I created to fit my insecurities." As the fireworks exploded overhead in a burst of color and sound, marking the start of a new year, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was not gone entirely. That would take more time. But alongside it now was hope, a belief that what had been broken could be mended, perhaps even made stronger at the points of repair. Later, as we all prepared for bed, Paul stopped me in the hallway. "Dominic," he said, his usual formality softened by genuine emotion. "I learned something important from all this." "What is that?" I asked. He smiled ruefully. "Sometimes people only value what they fear losing. We nearly lost you, not physically, but in every other way that matters. I do not intend to make that mistake again." The next morning, the first day of the new year, I woke early and went to sit on the dock, watching the sunrise over the bay. The water was calm, reflecting the pink and gold sky in perfect symmetry. I thought about dignity, about forgiveness, about the complicated dance of family relationships. Lisa had hurt me deeply, and that hurt would not disappear overnight. Trust once broken takes time to rebuild. But in choosing dignity over bitterness, in refusing to be diminished by rejection, I had created space for reconciliation that might never have existed otherwise. As I sat there watching the new day dawn, I felt a small hand slip into mine. Grace had come to join me still in her pajamas, her hair tousled from sleep. "Grandpa," she said, looking out at the water, "can we come back for Easter too, and maybe summer vacation?" I smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "I would like that very much." And in that moment, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever healing remained to be done, we had taken the first steps on a better path. One built not on appearances or social climbing, but on honesty, forgiveness, and the enduring bonds of family. What about you? Have you ever had to choose dignity over bitterness in a family situation? Do you think forgiveness is always possible, or are some betrayals too deep to heal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories about family healing and finding strength in difficult times. Thank you for listening, and may your own family relationships be filled with the honesty and respect everyone deserves.